You ever just had the inescapable urge, the driving hunger to just stab somebody? Well, maybe you're not alone. I submit for you the review of Piercing. Won't you come along with us? What's going on, Dungeon Dwellers? Welcome back to Dave's Dungeon. I am, as always, the one, the only, Dungeon Master Dave, here to bring you another review of something spooky and something scary on the way to Halloween. Today we are looking at Piercing. I believe this was out in 2016 or 2018. 2018. I'll say in a word, this movie is intriguing. Just, that's my one word sort of take on the film. It's very intriguing. It's very good. So if you're waiting on the TLDR, go see this. It's definitely worth your time. And definitely a avant-garde horror film. So be prepared. That being said, let's break down how I do these reviews. As always, I start with 5 criteria and I end with them. Those are plot, special effects, tension, gore, victim and killer, etc. So if I want to put extra stuff in there, I'll put it in that last little pinky spot. Each section gets reviewed out of 10, and then out of 50, we come up with a grade. So without further ado, let's get into this one. Overall, a simple setup for a film. Relatively few characters in this one, at a whopping 4 to 5. But it doesn't even really stay with those 4 to 5. This movie's only concerned with 2 people. Mia Wasikowska, however you say her name. I'm pretty sure it's Wasikowska. And Christopher Abbott, who both of them, I've always liked Mia. She's a great actress. I loved her in Alice in Wonderland. Anything else I've seen her in, she's kind of had a delightful pluck and brought an energy, and it's been really refreshing each time I've kind of seen her on film or on stage, either or, however you want to say that. Christopher Abbott's a new entity for me. I'm not familiar with him at all, and I have to say he was delightfully sort of realistic for me in moments, and then delightfully deranged and not realistic in others. He definitely feels like if Kit Harington and Kyle MacLachlan had a child. And some of you are going, whoa, and some of you are going, yes. Yeah, he's definitely got mannerisms and sort of behaviorism down in a weird, it's unnatural watching him do certain things. And especially parts of the plot. Man, it's so unnatural watching him in the hotel room and watching him go through it and go through the motions. And then once the actual events kick off, it's so jarring, and you get the sense that yes, it did rise to the level of knocking him out of his delusion. But then later on you see no, his delusion's still well intact, and you're just wondering where is this coming from? And the beginning of the film gives you a hint, and the film itself tries to sort of lead you to one explanation, but this seems far more involved than that. I don't. Some parts I thought I was watching a softcore. Some parts I thought I was watching a snuff film. And in neither time was I bored or disengaged. It's not weird enough to knock me out of it, but it's weird enough to make me go, what the fuck? What the fuck? What the fuck? And then you kind of have railroading WTF moments. And that, like I said, is not a bad thing. It definitely gets going and doesn't stop. And you do have to wonder how much of it is reliably told to you. So there is some of that going on, of how much of this is for real and how much of this is just sort of the stress of the moment taking its toll, so to speak. So for that reason, and given my overall enjoyment of the story that they told here, and its ending and its beginning, and sort of how we develop between the two, I'd give this an 8. I really do think it does a lot of things well. I do think it can hold you the whole time. Some people may just be weirded out and skeezed by the whole concept, but for those of you with the stomach for what type of film this is, and ultimately how this film works compared to other, spoiler, just in case, this is like the lightest of spoilers. We this season have already watched several serial killer films, and this is welcome addition amongst them. So for that reason, I have to say it's definitely an 8, because it definitely does a better job than, say, The House Jack Built. I'll get over it one day, I promise. It was just a bad film. But anyways, let's move on to special effects. I have to say, the special effects in this film are realistic. You definitely get a sense of reality for its sake at all times. And the special effects adhere to realisticness in a way. You don't get any sort of tropey weirdness in this one. Though there are hallucinations and drug use, you don't get too far gone, and I really appreciate that about that. That being said, they're a bit background muted. Not the reason you're here. You're here for the more of the plot and less of the special effects. And just it's hard to say where you're going to find a memorable shot in this film. It's hard to say where this film is going to really take you on a visual journey. I mean, there are a few that I would say rise to the level of sort of spectacle, but special effects in this, I would say, is a 7, because for what was there was good, but it didn't need, nor did it go to certain lengths. And I don't know, we'll talk a little bit about special effects in Gore as well, and you'll see why I may have taken a little bit off for the sort of how certain things are presented. And I'll explain that later in Gore, and then even later in spoilers. That being said, tension in this film. Tension is the golden egg of this film. It's the definite 10 of this film. Because from the moment you're started, Christopher Abbott creates a tension on screen that is palpable. And early on, you're just left with a sick feeling in your stomach. You are left just wondering, when is this guy going to chew the scenery? And I have to say, he delightfully does what he does, and he's not some like rage monster thing. It's very interesting how this character portrays his wants and needs, and sort of it's interesting how it plays the dynamic between Mia and Christopher. And it subdued? A little. Is it still playful and witty and sort of tortured the whole time? You bet. It goes there. You just wonder how much people are in on it, and then you wonder how much people are ready to do certain things and not. And we'll talk deeper in the spoiler section. I'm trying to keep it low profile here for those of you, who still want to go see this film without knowing any of the details. So for that reason, I'm going to give the tension in this film a 10. Now, I crapped on the gore a little bit. Excuse me, I had to clear my throat there. And the reason for that is some part of it felt weak. Gore is kind of where this film feels the weakest. The gore is okay to meh, because some of the scenes are fine, but then their sort of ultimate conclusion is not right. And then some of the other scenes you get, some rather hard to watch sort of violence, but the gore doesn't feel right or on point or regular for sort of what you get. So I have to say, I don't want this film to be gorier, but at the same time, I wish they had sort of sold the bits that they promised with what they were doing. You get what I'm saying? There's some things in here that they sort of suggest that they're going to pull off and that they promise as a sort of jab, so to speak, into the audience's arm. And to some of that they deliver, but then some of that they just it felt weak. It felt weak. I have to say that. It just didn't feel as fully there, sort of sold. And for that reason, I'm going to give that 7. I think it deserves a C. Because it's, like I said, none of the gore looked bad or off. It just didn't look fully there, or not that it even looked fully there. It's that the sort of acting around it didn't ever kind of translate to being fully there. You get what I'm saying? And that sort of treatment of it dissolves a bit of the sort of grip that gore can have. So it felt like they didn't quite go far enough, and I'm a person who likes my gore to be realistic, relatable, and believable. This was relatable, realistic. It just didn't fully rise to the level of believable, if you will. Victim and killer. I gotta say, this is also a 10. And I don't want to spoil anything about it because it's pretty core to the plot and core to the whole narrative. So we'll talk in spoilers a lot about this. So I'll leave it there. So if that's our review, let's look at our scores. We had a 8 in plot. We had a 7 in special effects. We had a 10 in tension. We had a 7 in gore. And then we had a, what did I say, 10? Yes, it should be a 10 because it's actually really, really good. So that's 3, 6, 8 off. So 42. So we're in that high B range. And like I say, it is that it's not, I don't want to say it's not groundbreaking. It is kind of groundbreaking the way this film sets up intrigue in the way it sets up its dynamic, in the way it sort of begs you to understand these characters. It is intriguing and it is groundbreaking in that way, but it's not the grooviest, scariest sort of most powerful horror film I saw this season, and it was just sort of an interesting thing to watch. Now that being said, it's very worth a watch. At the very least, it definitely goes there, and you should definitely put your eyeballs on it, because I had a blast with this one. I had a good time the whole way through. It didn't feel Nothing they set up felt stale or boring or bland or ridiculous, other than, maybe horror tropes, man. Horror tropes. If you know any horror tropes, you could have made it through this film. But, anyways, I think that's going to do it for the non spoiler section of this review. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. I really enjoyed putting these reviews together, and I hope that you see that in each one, and I hope you enjoy it too. So, let YouTube know that I am doing a good job. I really appreciate it if you would. And make sure you subscribe. I'm not putting this series down so much as slowing it down and doing a more thoughtful and careful review with each one I'm going to do going forward. But I plan on sticking around and reviewing a few more things. So if you've enjoyed these reviews so long or so far, make sure you stick around, because as we move along, I'll be doing some more. And then there's always Spooktober next year, which, oh man, I've already started talking to people about the next list. But we're coming to the end of Halloween here, or we're coming to the start of Halloween here pretty soon. So it won't be long. It won't be long before we have to say goodbye to our every other day or every couple of days I'm watching a movie reviews. But it's been fun, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the next review. But for now, those of you who don't want any spoilers need to run away. Need to shoo, go away. Oh man. Like, there are some disturbing ass scenes in this film. And I didn't realize, like, some of the least violent scenes were some of the most disturbing. And I didn't realize a film could do that to you. I didn't realize a film could sort of, jab you in the neck, so to speak. Oh, yeah, spoilers are coming. I'm going to start stabbing here in a minute, and I'm not going to stop. You've had your warning. You've had your chance. Spoilers. That's your third and final time. So, let's talk about piercing. Spoilers incoming. The dynamic between Christopher Abbott and Mia Wasikowska is amazing, and it really carries this whole film the whole time. And I really got to say, I love I don't want to say relationship, but yes, it is a relationship between the two of them as the film progresses. You get to see her early on, and I had my own assumptions about who this person was going to be, who Mia was supposed to be, because given who Christopher is shown to be early on with his own child, and you know, yeah, you get kind of scared for some people. I was worried about the baby, but everything's fine. Would that have made me rage quit? No, I've seen worse. But at the same time, would that have made the film go way, way down in my overall sort of viewing? Sure. Yeah, just doing that early would have been super kind of messed up and weird and wouldn't have set the stage right. And so I see why they kind of pulled back on that, and just had it be the pantomiming. So, and this is the difference between sort of pretending to do this stuff and then doing this stuff. Pretend to create a horror movie and creating a horror movie are two different things. Pretending to kill someone and killing someone are two different things. And I kind of get the idea that that's what this film is playing with. The idea that you might have a fantasy and it may feel good to act it out and act on it in particular ways and times. But in reality, what you may or may not be thinking about or feeling, like horror, is not a healthy or in any way productive thing to feel and or act out. The act of murdering something is not something you should want to feel good about doing. So you're at a juxtaposition between, do you resonate with the killer or do you resonate with the victim? Do you agree that killing is wrong, or are you resonating that yes, something can be inside of us that can drive us to want to do that to someone? And so this film has multiple sort of viewpoints that you can watch it from, and I really enjoyed that. The sort of inversion I never thought was going to happen that fast. I thought it would have been some sort of scenario where the two get into their sort of dance, if you will, between she's been called and he's in the room waiting on her, but he's prepped. I thought it was going to be sort of a slapstick, out of pocket, maybe even a, oh, what is that director? I can't remember his name, but we'll talk about him at another time when I do those reviews. But I thought it was going to be a happy sort of slapstick that comes from a comedy of errors, if you will. A sort of, oops, oh my bad, oops, oh, and then we're off to the races. The sort of everything's going wrong and then something happens. you know and we do kind of get there, but it never feels like, and I hate to say this, but it never feels like Mia Wasikowski is doing anything other than what that character wanted to do. And you don't really deal in names a whole lot here, so I'm referring to the two actors by their sort of real names for that reason, because throughout the film you don't really get a sense of who these people, who their identities were. That's not the point. The point is who these two people are with each other. And it's very interesting to see how just the change in scenario, just the shift from what we get in the beginning to what we get later on is sort of how this film pulls you along for the ride. It changes your clothes, so to speak, and it puts you in it in a really nice way. But it never feels like Mia's on the back foot. It feels like Mia knows what's going on and has control the whole time. And I have to say, as somebody who was in that profession, I would hope she would. I would hope that that was the way this goes. All but the sort of not getting stabbed, but stabbing yourself in the shower. I would hope that's not on the regular. Though, with people who inflict self-harm, it could be. But that being said, something about it just didn't feel delivered. And that was one of those violent scenes that I felt just didn't kind of go all the way, is just her sort of control over it and the delivery of it didn't shock me, but at the same time didn't drive me to the place where it was like, okay, I believe that happened. And her sort of behavior with it just distracts from that as well. So, when you give me a gory moment, don't just give me a gory moment. Films, directors, if you're giving me gore and you're giving me an effect, use that effect and make sure I see it, and make sure it has its power, and make sure it has its time, because otherwise you did it but then you just kind of left it hanging out there and didn't make it work. You didn't drive it home. You didn't sort of make its consequences felt. And that's where I say, I get where she had a history with that, but it would still have its impact and effect. You understand? Oh man. And to be perfectly honest, if at any point he had been less who he is, he could have just walked up out of there and been done, and that would have been the end of it. But here he was trying to pull off a hat trick. Put the hat down. Ha! Oh! And I have to say, this movie is in welcome company with the likes of American Psycho, with the likes of, you name your favorite serial killer film. This has its sort of roots there on the sort of intro journey to how you get started. You have an urge to stab someone and you don't know how to make it go away. So you try to go pick someone else to stab. Fair enough. Sounds like a good enough rationale for anyone. But realistically, you wouldn't have been as polite with it. I mean, for real. Like, you're asking someone to stab them in no circumstances, not even S&M, are you gonna get someone who's gonna understand that. And his sort of, I don't know, his sort of pluck about the whole way had to be done a certain way. It had to be the perfect scenario. Just sort of, it was real weird. But at the same time, with him, you're just laughing at it sometimes, and it has a really nice comedic effect, given everything else that Mia's doing. Mia is not futzing around or asking for permission. Mia's just doing what Mia does. She's messing people up and not asking for forgiveness or permission. And you just sort of wonder, like, how much of it was what he wanted and how much of it was what she wanted. And how much of it was her interpreting what he wanted. Because I feel like he knew that there were ways to get what he wanted, and I didn't know if he was in on the whole thing being a certain kind of way or her being in on it a certain kind of way. And so the ending though just was like perfect symmetry and sort of the great deliverable of the film. If you're playing up for a moment, have the whole film play up to the punchline and then deliver it, and never once take your foot off the gas. This is it's sort of like watching a softcore. If you know what S&M softcores look like, it's sort of like a softcore. And I apologize for anybody who this makes uncomfortable. Sometimes horror's like that. Sometimes it's as much poking at our needs as it is anything, and some of those needs are sexual. It has its place. That being said, I don't feel like it ever went too far. So no worries about it. Any Last House on the Left or The Girl Next Door vibes. Okay, none of those sort of rape films. I will say that there's no sort of like any of that in this. Everything's kept on the up and up. Mostly consensual. I say mostly. Poor Christopher and poor Mia. Man, they had to do some really shitty stuff to one another. But it was good watching it. Like I felt like it had a really good pop. I felt like the two characters came together well. It was nice to see the inversion because, like I said, Mia never feels like she's out of control, and Christopher never felt like he was in control. But that's just like what you would expect. because she's the one who's done this a bunch. He hasn't, and seeing the sort of magic inversion and who's the more conniving and who's the more sort of villain here and who's got who on the back foot the whole time is rather just magical to watch. And then watching the end deliver sort of what it's been setting up to the whole time is just phenomenal. I really enjoyed that part of it, and it left me with a smile the whole time. I was just, by the end of it, by the last half, I wasn't watching my phone, I wasn't watching my watch, I was just watching the film and smiling because the performance I was getting, the sort of, it's two characters in a room and go, and just let's see how much we can do. And it just felt right, and it felt like one of those movies that you could show someone to be like, this right here is what I want. Oh, but I think that's going to do it for this review. I hope you've enjoyed it, you horror fanatics and dungeon dwellers. I really did have a lot of fun with this film, and I really can't stress enough how much you should want to go see it. It is definitely doing some extra stuff, okay? And, I think this will have its place amongst horror fans going forward. I feel like there's going to be so much of the younger crowd that's going to find this film, and they're going to go, wow, this is a good film. And then it's going to find its place. But this is going to be a cult film for some people. Me, namely, assuming that this film didn't get any good reviews or any love. It seemed like they were okay. Like they were 6s and 7s. But for me, this is like a B. This is still in that, it has problems, but it's real good and definitely worth watching space. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the like button and the bell so you letting YouTube know that I am doing a good job and you're getting all the notifications so you'll know exactly when I drop new videos. But without further ado, I think that's going to do it. So thank you for joining me on these adventures, Dungeon Dwellers. And I look forward to seeing you on our next adventures. But until then, y'all nasty. Keep your kinky butts in your house.